Siftpop podcast is recorded in front of a live internet audience. Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks. We'll never get out of this bunker because we lost our sling rings. It's Siftpop.
I guess you could, try the door.
Was it just me, or when you heard sling ring? Now, see, I didn't know anything about Doctor Strange. This is our movie, by the way. I thought of, Sling TV. Like, in the future, everybody has all their, TV shows on a ring. This is their sling ring.
That's all you. That's all you.
Nobody else in the universe thought of that one. Welcome to Siftpop, streaming live on Mixlr every Friday or available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get those perks.
Patrons get those perks. Huh. I'm Aaron Dicer from YourMovieFriend.com. I'm joined by Andrew Ormsby from Flick Freaks.
Ahoy!
Every week we'll be joined by a pop culture guru to chat about movies, television, and whatever else is on our pop culture minds. Today's guru from the Shoe the Dough podcast, it's Danae Hughes.
Woo! My favorite guru.
I feel a little awkward about being called a pop culture guru.
It is a little awkward for you. I think it'd be better to call.
It's more like an honorary title,
right? It'd be better to call you original host or something like that.
The OG,
the OG host of Siftpop.
Pop culture averse Danae.
Danae comes on when there's actually a movie out that she doesn't mind seeing, and then when Danae's on, we also talk about Danae's world of pop culture. So she gets to pick, kind of the pop culture topics after we do the movie. We'll, of course, do some buried treasure at the end. But Andrew, why don't you start us off with some Do We Care? Read some pop culture headlines, and Danae and I will say whether we care to talk more about them.
As always, 3 Do We Cares. Number 1, Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool, said he will not be coming back because of creative differences. He would... now they're looking at David Leitch, the guy who directed John Wick, to come on as the frontrunner for Deadpool 2.
Oh, man. That could be interesting.
Sorry that came out so bad. My printer only decided to print the first half of some words. So I'm like, what is that word there?
I love John Wick. So, in general, unless it's a director I really, really love, director changes don't interest me that much. I'll wait and see the movie. Because, as we've seen, directors can do drastically different things on different movies.
And I'm going to talk about that later on.
Very cool. Is it something that you care about?
A little bit. I am a huge fan of whenever there's a directorial change and stuff, because I try and look at specific things. For example, let's talk about, what's his name? David Leitch. Whenever I look at John Wick movies, I see very precise, smooth moments, and he also does a lot of the choreography for that because he was a fight choreographer before he directed.
Right.
So when I look at the first Deadpool movie, it was funny and it was comedic, but the action wasn't all that great because it was just a bunch of, him doing backflips and spinning while he was shooting and stuff. It wasn't really that impressive. If you get Ryan Reynolds writing this and helping David with that aspect,
that's what I was just going to say,
of directing and the writing and stuff, Deadpool 2 has the potential, if David decides to do this, to be better than the first one.
Right, because it'll hit all the humor and snark, and at the same time, we'll have better action.
Yes.
Yeah, could be. Danae, thoughts?
I don't care.
All right.
All right, moving on to number 2.
Number 2, and I put this one in here for me, just so everybody knows, okay?
So Andrew cares deeply about this one.
The Dark Tower film has been pushed from February to summer.
Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew.
But wouldn't you rather that happen than them release something crappy?
The reason why it's getting pushed back is they did a test screening of the trailer and stuff, and people say it's terrible.
Oh, no. They wait a second.
How can they just test the trailer?
True. They test screened the trailer?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a whole nother level of hate for me. Yeah. How could you know anything about whether or not a movie will do well by test screening the trailer?
People who saw the trailer said it looks like a YA film.
Well, then make a different trailer, but that doesn't mean you have to push the movie back.
I don't know.
I
am more and more nervous about this because you guys know.
It's your favorite, man.
It's my favorite medium of all time. More than any book, movie, television show.
That's how I felt going into Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I was just, which of course there's much more. Well, there's a lot of, I guess there was games and all kinds of TV shows and everything going into that series.
Yeah.
But we know that turned out okay.
It did pretty good.
It was awesome.
It did pretty good.
Well, we'll be hoping with you, Andrew, that it comes together.
So scared.
I know nothing about the Dark Tower stuff. I've never read a single word.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it'll all be new. So
All right.
that's Stephen King, though, right?
It is Stephen King.
Okay. Yeah, I
Number
thought that.
3.
I guess I do know something about it.
Yeah. So there you go. Number 3, Jennifer Lawrence and Scarlett Johansson will be battling it out in 2 different films, both biopics of F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife, Zelda Fitzgerald.
Wait a second. The way you read that made it sound like they are both in both movies.
No.
What you mean is they are playing
They're both
in
playing
separate
Zelda
movie.
Fitzgerald, both biopics.
It's crazy that Hollywood continues to do this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Release the exact same, 2 different companies release basically the exact same movie.
Yeah.
And it happens so often.
I know. I thought it was just me. I'm like, oh, maybe because they are doing that with the Jungle Book because Andy Serkis has his Jungle Book coming out next year, I think.
Right. Which is a different property. I mean,
no, still the same Mowgli and everything because he's doing all the motion capture.
It's Rudyard Kipling. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, because he's doing all the motion capture for it and everything.
Oh, okay.
I haven't heard anything about them scrapping the film since Disney's, so I'm just going to continue to believe that thing's going to happen until I read otherwise. So
I don't really care, other than just why. Like, why did we get dueling volcano movies? Why did we get dueling asteroid hitting the Earth movies? Why did we get dueling animated bugs movies? You know, like it just. There were dueling biopics about Prefontaine the Runner. Like, how does that happen?
Here's what I think happens. The pre-production for films is so enormous, like years worth of stuff before you even hear about a movie.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about The Revenant back in 2003 because there was going to be acting calls in Missouri to go up and act in it and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And that was back in 2003, and the movie just came out last year or 2 years ago.
Sure, but how does that make it more likely that 2 will be at the same time?
Because, if you ever have an interesting story, and biopics are all the rage nowadays, they're running out of people to tell stories about. Inevitably, you're going to have 2 people. But, yeah, it's weird, but at the same time, it's like, if you've put so much time and money and invested so much effort into getting a movie, and you find out somebody else is doing the exact same thing, it's kind of like a game of chicken. Who's going to quit first, And then sometimes people don't quit.
Often, apparently, people don't quit because it continues to happen time and time again. I just don't understand it.
Yeah.
But this is about F. Scott Fitzgerald.
His wife, Zelda.
Oh, his wife, Zelda.
Yeah.
Didn't F.
Zelda
Scott Fitzgerald write the national anthem? Is that who F. Scott Fitzgerald is?
Sure.
No, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Or is it a different writer?
I
know
could
it's a
probably
writer.
look it up. Yeah.
No, that's all right. Somebody has already corrected me in the chat.
That was quick.
Francis Scott Key. Yes, that is correct. He wrote the national anthem.
Yeah.
F. Scott Key, not F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Thanks, BDG. The BDG's got our back.
He doesn't mind. He doesn't mind making me feel bad.
Or the BDG and Google has our back.
He just knows you'd rather be correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't mind being wrong. I'd rather be right next time.
That's how it works, okay?
That's my life motto. I don't mind being wrong because I'd rather be right next time.
Just don't make me feel like trash.
The reality you know is one of many.
This doesn't make any sense.
Not everything does. Not everything has to. Through the mystic arts, we harness energy and shape reality. We travel great distances in an instant.
How do I get from here to there?
How did you become a doctor?
Study and practice, years of it. There's a strength to him. But is he ready?
Today, you ready to talk some movies?
Good.
It's been a while, right?
Yeah.
This is actually what I'm the most excited about.
Let's talk a little bit before we go into Doctor Strange, because we're going to spend most of the episode obviously talking about the new Marvel movie, Doctor Strange, starring Benedict Cumberbatch as, I would say, as a non-comic book person, a lesser-known comic book character. It reminds me of like when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, where it's like, something that not a lot of people are attached to, but, it's in their property base. And kind of a metaphysical physician. He's a physician and then becomes metaphysical, and it's just very strange and very interesting, but we'll get there. But before we do, I want to talk about the experience of going to the movie for 2 reasons. Number 1, Andrew, you saw your first IMAX laser.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear a little bit about that. And number 2, Danae, you haven't been to a movie in forever, so I wanted to kind of hear what it was like after being forced to go to movies week after week to go to one after you haven't been to one for a while? So let's start with you, Danae.
I actually kind of struggled with even thinking about my review process because I did have to kind of go into that place where I was like, okay, I actually went to go see a movie. I sat down in a theater and I watched it. I watched it and I did it. So I did it. Now I got to talk about it. So
There's
it was
a step
weird.
two.
It was weird. I was like, I couldn't get into the same sort of mindset, but I think I had a good time. I think, Marvel tells a good story for the most part, and they have fun visuals, but I had no idea what to expect going in. I didn't even know Benedict Cumberbatch was in this.
Nice.
So when he was on screen, I was like, oh, hey there.
Hey there, buddy.
What are you doing here? And then, so I had no idea about any of it. So that was an interesting experience, which that was normal for us before. But I did watch the previews this time because I didn't feel guilty at all.
How did that feel for you?
Well,
were you upset that you saw the new Star Wars preview?
No, because I don't even know if I'm going to go watch it.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, oh, cool. This is just maybe all I'll ever see. So I saw some of the stuff coming out, and I like to judge them going like, oh, that's not going to do well. Oh, that's going to do great. Oh, that's not going to do good. So yeah, I think I had a pretty good time.
Good. What about you, Andrew? How was your experience seeing IMAX Laser for the first time?
So I went down to Branson, and I went with Shawn Michael from Geek.0
okay.
and MJ Roper from All Tower Media. We had a lovely time. We went to the Outback, not the Outback Steakhouse, but, Branson has their own specific one. We had some alligator, we had some crab. It was delicious. And then we went to the IMAX Laser. Now, we have an IMAX theater here in Springfield, but it's not a laser. It's just regular old projector.
We call those Limax because they're a smaller screen. They're not technically a full IMAX
Not
resolution.
because they're lying? It sounds like you're saying they are liars.
Well, because they call it IMAX, but it's really not. That's why they're called Limax.
Yeah.
That's like an actual term that the industry uses for...
Oh, you didn't make it up yourself?
No, don't get me wrong. IMAX doesn't use that term, but I just mean the general kind of movie-going populace says Limax about smaller IMAX.
Why do they just call them Minimax?
That's probably what IMAX calls them.
Yeah. So I didn't know if the screen was bigger, if I was just sitting closer. Turns out screen's bigger.
Oh, yes, a lot bigger.
And the sound design in the real IMAX theaters... Holy moly! It's so much better.
Yeah, it sounds incredible in that place.
So I went to the exact same theater. I think both of you went to go and see The Force Awakens in, correct?
No, we saw Batman
you saw
v Superman there.
And Jungle Book.
In Jungle Book. We also saw Jungle Book there.
Okay, no, you saw Force Awakens
in Los Angeles.
In the LA Laser IMAX. Okay, so maybe you can talk more to the technicals of it, but they use a laser projector so you get more darker tones, like if something is dark. So it was something really cool. In the beginning of the movie, it's really dark and shadowy. There were pillars that were like dark in the beginning of this movie, and even though it was black, I could still feel them coming towards me.
Right, yeah.
Oh, this is going to be good. Because normally, that just wouldn't come across on a normal projector. So the whole aspect of that was mind-blowing for me. It was phenomenal.
So good. So you did see the difference, and you
very
could,
much.
Okay,
so.
yeah. I'm the same way. Not to get too technical, but they use two laser projectors, and so what it allows is one to project the blacks and one to project the whites, and so there's a complex computer algorithm that determines which computer does which, so that the contrast value means that the lighter parts don't bleed over into the darker parts.
Yeah.
And so it's just very high contrast and beautiful.
It was super crisp. It was, lovely.
Good. I'm glad you had a great experience.
Having watched Doctor Strange in the theater and having watched other movies in the IMAX Laser, I would assume that this would be a really fun one to watch.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
planning on making a trip to see this in IMAX Laser.
And the reason why I chose this movie specifically to see is because I wanted a visual spectacle film to see in the laser.
Good job. Mission accomplished.
I wanted to wait either for this film or Rogue One.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going back for Rogue One to see at the Laser IMAX now that I know what it's capable of.
Now that you're a believer?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of being a believer, were we a believer in this movie? Let's start with, did you like it, love it? It was okay, dislike it, hated it. And if anybody hated it, you're no longer welcome on the show. Just kidding. Andrew, where do you want to start?
Loved it.
Loved it.
Loved it.
Danae?
I liked it.
I'm going to go with liked it, so close to loved it.
Really liked it?
Really liked it. I have a feeling if I watched it on IMAX Laser, I bet I would be over in the loved it camp. Isn't that funny how technical things can change the way you view a movie?
Well, I think that for a movie like this, the visual aspect of it is such a high proper or part of it. So if you take that away, it kind of will take away from your experience in the movie.
Yeah.
So
and that's not to say the screen we saw it on was bad. I thought it was fine. It looked good. But I just couldn't quite go into loved it, and there are a couple of reasons I'll get into. But let's start with the good stuff, because there is plenty to talk about. We've already talked about the visuals quite a bit. Danae, what would you say it was about the visuals that made them such a part of this movie? Like, try to explain that to somebody who maybe hasn't seen it.
Well, as somebody who had no idea what we were getting into, Doctor Strange is like introducing us into a world where we can access magical kind of sorceress type powers. It kind of felt a little bit like Avatar in a way, in that way.
Yes, I had that feeling as well.
And a lot of other movies where you've got people kind of conjuring or, manipulating things. And so what I liked about the visuals is that they seem to be an assistant to the storytelling in a really good way. They were beautiful and not too distracting, not where it was confusing. Which, again, they're trying to explain kind of a lot about the depths of why we're able to access power, but then also, these great, this is a psychedelic acid trip. Don't do drugs ever, but specifically don't do drugs and watch this movie because it might be a little bit too much because there's just so much visually happening, but it seems to all aid the story pretty well. So I think they did a good job of going overboard just a little bit sometimes, but also pulling back because we're talking about like a multiverse. And so they're really peeling back the layers and going, we're in this multiverse. And to do that well, I don't know. I think this is probably the best that it could be done, or one of the best.
You said exactly what I was going to say, which is the visuals. The thing I loved about them the most is that they informed the story and made the exposition of this crazy, detailed, confusing universe a beautiful thing to figure out.
Yeah, and it's like I think I understood everything. I feel like at the end of the movie, with all the different things that they're manipulating and that are happening visually, that I actually was following along. So maybe I'm wrong and I don't actually know what's going on, but I think I do. So that's what matters.
Yeah, and I felt the exact same way. What about you, Andrew?
So on the visual front of it, their work with gravity in this movie is like something Inception wanted to do, but couldn't.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I guess whenever you throw a Disney budget at something, they'll find a way to do it. So, yeah, I think this is the most visually stunning Marvel film ever made.
Oh, yeah, I think that's safe.
I wrote down that I thought that it was Inception mixed with a kaleidoscope on top of a mandala.
I don't even know what a mandala is.
I'll pull one up on here.
Do you know what a mandala is?
I know what a kaleidoscope is.
I got the kaleidoscope reference.
Yeah.
So
they're one of those rugs.
There's visual patterns specifically.
Oh, I see.
So
yeah.
That's exactly what it looked like. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, the work with gravity and the way that they did it, Marvel can do no wrong besides Ant-Man.
Ant-Man was great.
Disagree. But so yeah, what was I going to say? Another thing, the performances in this movie. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, let's go there.
So Benedict Cumberbatch, I was nervous about him playing Stephen Strange. After watching the movie now, I don't think they could have gotten anybody better.
I think his performance is stunning. I will tell you, I was distracted through a lot of the movie by his American accent.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's his fault.
Yeah.
Wait, you were?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, I don't understand.
I noticed that it was it sounded a little forced.
He has such a beautiful, thick, deep British accent and everything I've seen him in.
I never once noticed it.
That's great. I'm glad. Because here's the thing. Even though I noticed it and I was distracted by it, I still loved his performance. Like, I thought he was so good as Doctor Strange.
I'm sure that his accent was spot on. I think it's just the fact that I know it's like, that's not what you sound like.
Right, that's what it is. It's just this cognitive dissonance.
You guys know him from another show.
Yeah. Oh,
what is that show called?
Sherlock.
Oh, yeah. I watched that one time. Hey, guys. This is why it's good not to watch pop culture all the time.
Then we wouldn't have a show.
Because you wouldn't have had any of that influencing your experience. I'm just saying.
Sherlock, Star Trek.
He was awesome in Star Trek.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has a super thick accent. He's also in the Hobbit movies. And
he is?
He's Smaug.
He's Smaug, the dragon.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Yeah, what did you think of other performances? You have like Chiwetel Ejiofor, you have Tilda Swinton, Mads Mikkelsen.
I thought Tilda Swinton knocked it out of the park. I thought
and that
she
was
was
another
so
part.
good.
Knowing the comic books a little bit, obviously I've only read just a couple of them because DC fan. But
That's the ancient one?
Yes.
the ancient
Okay,
one,
okay.
yeah, is obviously played by a man in the comic books, and people are like, oh, I don't know if Tilda Swinton can pull it off. Yeah, she can. I knew
she was
she
great.
could do it.
So that's a man in the comics.
Yeah,
Cool.
it is totally a dude, an old dude, like old Mr. Miyagi type.
I really
dude.
enjoyed that character a lot because sometimes you've got these mysterious, people who are teaching the next generation about, powers or martial arts. They go to this place to do whatever and they meet this person that has all this knowledge and power, and it's done off in some mediums. I actually really enjoyed her performance because it was the perfect amount of, you can tell that this person's super powerful and you can tell that this person has a complexity as well. So I thought that she did a really, really good job. And also, did she actually shave her head?
Probably. She's done it before.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Because she's got super short hair now, so I just made the assumption.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
She's always had short hair, so I think that her just cutting it all off, it will be back like in a week or so.
I wonder if she smokes cigarettes, though, because she did have the cigarette lines on her lips.
That is something I would not have recognized.
Yeah.
What are cigarette lines?
Well, when you smoke, you pooch your lips together to suck on the end of the cigarette.
Sure.
Nobody, don't smoke. It's bad for you. And so over time, you get lines on your lips.
Oh, interesting. Just like frown lines, or just like
exactly.
your face would develop any other kind of.
So as she spoke, I was always like, I wonder if she smokes.
Thoughts of Danae during the movie.
Can I say? I'm sorry, Andrew.
Well, I wanted to.
I'm just reading, so you go ahead.
I wanted to ask you earlier. You mentioned seeing Avatar in this, and I meant to clarify. Are you talking about James Cameron Blue People Avatar, or the Last Airbender Avatar?
Last Airbender.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Sorry,
clarify.
yeah, no, I understand why.
Especially a lot of the shapes they made and different,
because
things
you have
like
this
that.
element of the people who are acting; they're making gestures into the air, and then visually, you've got this visual effects over the top of it, kind of to go against that or to go with that. I also wanted to say I really enjoyed the costuming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This was a really fun costuming. Everything that was on screen, I was just absorbing. It was really beautiful.
I agree. I brought that back up because the first thought I had when I saw Tilda Swinton was, she would have been a much better Aang in the last Avatar movie. She looks like him.
Yeah, it was a lot of that part. I really, really enjoyed a lot. Most of the movie, I think I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
What else you got?
I have two more things before I can get into cons.
Okay, cool.
So Scott Derrickson, the guy who directed this, he's known for making horror films like Sinister and The Exorcist, the remake and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel has, I don't know how they do it. They must have some kind of algorithm to where they can pull directors from things that you would never expect them to be good at doing a Marvel film. And for some reason, they can pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think it is about Marvel or maybe Disney in general, how they can pull directors from very obscure areas and they can knock it out of the park?
I think it's the obscurity that does it. I think the director in Marvel movies, more than many other movies, is almost just insignificant is too strong of a word, but is less of a significant part of the puzzle because they have such a huge group of people who are in charge of shepherding this thing. Like they know what they do with these movies. You saw it with Edgar Wright when he was supposed to do Ant-Man, right? Mm-hmm. He couldn't fit into how they did the Marvel Universe, so they had to go a different direction. Yeah. When they pick these obscure directors, it allows them to mold them, I think, into doing the movie the way that they know their movies have to be done.
Okay.
So that's my thought, my opinion. I think has a lot to, I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. It's really incredible to see these directors who, haven't done a lot, step in and do these amazing movies.
Yeah.
So
the final pro I had is I was nervous going into this how they were going to tie in the mysticism of Stephen Strange into the cinematic universe that they've already created for the Avengers stuff. Sure, they have Thor, but even there, it's not as potent as it is in Stephen Strange. Moving forward, I am very, very excited to see how he ties into the cinematic universe.
It's becoming really interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
No spoilers here, but wow, the way that this could tie into the entirety of what's going on with the
Well, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that Marvel movies always have a post-credit scene,
mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty stoked. I'll just say that I'm pretty
With the first one or the second one?
the first one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let's go into some of the things maybe we didn't like about it.
Okay.
I'll start with this one. I thought it started a little slow for me.
I had pacing as mine.
Yeah, the pacing at the beginning it took a bit to get going. Now, again, the level of difficulty on this is huge because they have so much work to do explaining who this is, where he comes from, to really give time to the relationship that's needed, to buy into it. But I felt like it started a little bit slow. That was really kind of the primary negative that I saw. Danae, did you have anything stood out to you as a negative?
Maybe that's part of what I was experiencing. So, this character has, as most characters do, a transition of the heart. So you've got this person whose entire life is all built around what's going on before he has this transition into kind of more the superhero role, which, not a spoiler, that's just normal kind of stuff that happens in these movies. But I found myself having a hard time at the end of the movie really pinpointing that heart transition. And so by the end of the movie, I'm still not quite sure that I understand who he is as a character, like where he stands,
where the growth was, what happened.
I know that I saw growth, and I know that they showed us certain elements. That there's certain times whenever he has moments where I was, you actually do get to see growth, and you're supposed to feel it, but I wasn't feeling it, and I don't know why I wasn't feeling it. I've been trying to figure that out since I saw the movie last night, and I just can't pinpoint what it is. And I wondered if it was, I don't know. He's such a strong personality in some ways, and then in the ways where they're trying to kind of make him more heart-centered and loving, it just didn't connect. And I wonder, in like the whole training part and the transition part, if they could have done something more in there to really showcase that he was going to become this, person that was going to make decisions later on, that selfishness versus selflessness and all that stuff. So there was something kind of missing in there for me.
I agree. It's buried a lot deeper than it usually is in the Marvel movies. That stuff is, and maybe I'm having to read into it to find anything. During the spoilers, I think I can pull some stuff out that really stood out to me as far as building character and building story and those kind of things. But for now, I would just say I agree overall with what you're saying.
And I also want another thing I kind of wrote down is I didn't think there was enough humor.
Oh, that's funny. I thought there was too much.
There was a lot of humor.
I thought there was too much. That was
Yeah.
my thing. I said they tried to make this movie funnier than it needed to be. That was actually my second
would
critique.
more agree with Andrew on that. Like I felt like
I
win. Sorry. Anyhow, my mind just went back to the good dinosaur argument.
I do
mine too.
I do want to come back to this maybe in a little bit of a spoiler chat later on because I'm kind of curious, like
we thought was funny.
What you thought was funny?
Okay. Yeah.
I think what they tried to make funny, but yeah. That's a conversation to be had for sure.
Yeah, I think.
Anything else that you guys wanted to say?
One more thing. We can do one more thing about the movie if we're ready to kind of close out and move on.
I'll let that be my one last thing, and I'll let you guys go.
The humor?
Yeah.
My one last thing is there's an element of, again, trying not to spoil a lot, but there's an element of time manipulation in this movie, which can often be a huge distraction for me because of issues with time. However, I will say, this movie, I bought it hook, line, and sinker in this movie. What they did with time in this movie,
I wondered if you were going to struggle with that.
It wasn't. And here's what I think it was. There's a difference between time travel and time manipulation. And this movie is more time manipulation than time travel, and I think that's easier to go along with in some ways because there's just some. I don't want to give anything away, but just to say, it's. I bought it, so that would be my one more thing.
I will say. Just, final conflict, every movie has one. Best final conflict in a Marvel film for me.
Ooh, I'd have to think about that one. I thought it was great, but I'd have to think about that.
Because of how unique it was.
Danae, what's your one more thing?
There is a character that we have not discussed that was one of my favorite things, and it's likened to the carpet from Aladdin. And it was one of my favet parts
I had that
of the
exact
movie.
same thought.
And I wanted that character to be so much more in this movie as kind of like this fun little sidekick type thing. But I'm hoping that maybe as Doctor Strange appears in other films, we might be able to see that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of your humor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like 2 scenes.
I
thought there was more than that.
Man, yeah. I guess I'm just thinking of a lot more than
And that's actually a phenomenal comparison. I never
I felt
actually
like-
did that in my head. So
That was my
that's
first thought. I was like,
It was my
oh,
first thought too. I was
oh,
well.
really?
My first thought was, I know exactly what it's going to look like in the live, action Aladdin that's coming out in 2 years or whatever.
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
good call. Good call.
Yeah, I would just say this one more thing about the humor. The theater we were in was laughing through the entire thing. Man, we had a different experience, I guess. Let's talk about Patreon.
Yeah, please. Let's do that.
Patreon supports the podcast network that Siftpop is a part of, the Studio DNA podcast network. If you go to patreon.com/Studio DNA, you will see all the details. The reason these podcasts can be on and do what they do is because of your support. It starts at $3 a month. Some pretty fun perks, including getting into any of our live shows. We have an annual live show we do in Springfield, Missouri. You get in for free.
Gifts.
We've got, if you do $10 a month, actually, there's an annual gift that we'll send to you. And as well as everybody who gives is entitled to the patron-only podcast feed, which I think is actually the coolest perk because every single podcast on the podcast network shows up there automatically, plus all the bonus episodes that don't show up in the regular podcast feed, including today. We did a best ever challenge on visually inventive movies. So we talked about our favorite visually inventive movies.
A lot of fun.
That's only available for patrons. So again, for like $3 a month, you can get all that stuff direct in your podcast feed. You don't even have to go to the website to get it. So thank you for doing that. It means a lot to us. It's patreon.com/Studio DNA. All right, on to Danae's World.
Whoa, guys.
Does Danae's World have a theme song? It's
Classic
Danae's World.
It sounds like Bobby's World.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
ever watch that?
Oh yeah, it did.
That
I
was
love
Howie
Bobby's
Mandel.
World.
Howie
right?
Howie Mandel. That was a really fun cartoon. And in fact, that's what we're going to be talking about today.
I didn't do my research.
Uncle, what was his uncle's name? Uncle, the big fat uncle that always had the Hawaiian T-shirt or the Hawaiian button-ups.
Was it Uncle Howie? I don't remember.
Was it?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Bobby's World. Uncle Ted? No.
Uncle Ted Talk.
Uncle Ted Talk. I have no idea.
Yeah. I don't think we should spend that much time finding out
No,
what Bobby's
Danae, what do
uncle.
we want
It
to
says
talk
Uncle Ted.
Okay.
So maybe it actually is Uncle Ted.
Oh, I'll believe it.
The chat suggests Uncle Buck, but no, that's a different movie.
Uncle
Totally.
Buck with
totally
the John
different.
Candy.
Yes.
Those
They did
pancakes.
they did a TV show of that a couple seasons ago, didn't they? Tried
What?
an Uncle Buck TV show.
No,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah, they did. It didn't go anywhere. Don't
Leave
worry
it
about
alone. Okay.
I wanted to tell you guys that when Girl on a Train came out, I read the book. I didn't
Yeah,
want to
let's
see
talk
the. I did not want to see the movie because I wasn't interested in the movie. Because
Good
what?
call.
Shocker.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know what happened because sometimes there's those murder mysteries. And I was flying back from Delaware to Springfield, and so I picked up a book at the airport. Which, by the way, if you get them at specific stores, you can return them at the stores in another airport location, and you can get half of your money back. I mean, then they just turn around and sell it again.
I
But
think it's kind of like a half library thing that airports do now.
so I picked up this book. I started binge reading it. By the time I landed at my final place, I had 20 pages to go. So I took pictures of the last 20 pages with Aaron's help
Illegal.
so that I could read it and finish it. Then Aaron got it in the mail the next day.
Oh, wow.
So they sent it to him as one of the screener things, you know?
Yeah.
So I would have had a chance to finish it no matter what, which is nice to know. But I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about, because I didn't get a chance to listen to the Siftpop podcast.
I think we did that in one of the exclusive pre-shows, actually. We maybe chatted about
just
that
a
just
pre-show.
a bit briefly. We both didn't like the movie.
Didn't like the movie?
At all.
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't like the book. And
Oh.
I had a couple people that I asked what they thought, and they loved the book. But I thought it was really slow. And the interesting thing about the book is it goes back and forth in time. Like it'll go back.
Movie does that too.
Was
Yeah.
it confusing in the
It was
Yes,
confusing
very.
in the movie.
It was confusing in the book too, because, you had to actually remember, okay, because the way that they had it was like months and such. So you had to kind of go back and be like, oh, what's happening here? And then eventually you just stop caring and like, whatever.
Did
was
you
the book as predictable as the movie?
did you know how it was going to end?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not know how it was going to end, and I was trying to figure that the whole time. There were not a lot of example or like moments where it was like really clear.
It's harder to hide that stuff visually.
But let me tell you what they did a good job in the book of, or what the author did a good job in the book, was you're inside the mind. It's all eye perspective, which I, for the record, find annoying to read. I woke up in the morning. I went and put my shoes on. I was like, wow. So it was all from first person perspective.
You more like the omniscient third person kind of thing, yeah.
And then whenever it would switch over, we're in a different woman's. So it was still eye perspective, but a different person entirely. So you kind of had these two characters that were like going about their life and interacting in their own odd ways. In fact, there's actually 3 characters at one point in time, the 3 women that were in this book. But the main character is an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And so to be inside the mind in a book of somebody who is an alcoholic and has blackouts and doesn't remember things and having a hard time piecing things together and just thinks her life is just totally messed up, that was interesting because
they tried to do that in the movie too.
How did they pull that off?
They didn't.
I don't think they did very well.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't translate the same way. You're not in somebody's head. You're actually seeing what they're doing. And so it's
that outside looking in perspective that just doesn't work.
You can't actually get in somebody's head like you can in a book.
The whole time I was reading the book, I thought, how did they do this? Did they do it well? How did they do this? Because you are in such a unique position as a reader. So I can see this story developing better. The entire action sequence for the reveal of who the actual murderer is and the whole end fight sequence all happened in those last 20, 30 pages, which is why I had to take pictures of it. Because I was like, we finally get to the big we're finally starting to understand what's going on. There was a couple things I thought that visually might be interesting to see on a movie screen, but
you want to say them? I don't care I don't care if we spoil this 3 weeks after or whatever.
We're telling people not to see the movie anyway. So.
It was a bit confusing in the book, but she was seeing, so the night when the disappearance of the woman happened and she was, the main character's like in the tunnel area and her ex-husband kind of shows up.
Yeah.
There were details that were fuzzy for her. And so at the end of the book, she's saying to herself, she's realizing that the dress was a different color and you're like, oh, okay, so I thought that might be kind of interesting to see on the screen.
No, they didn't do anything with that. They just had her realize it. They just had you'd flash back to it and she'd know more details. It wasn't like things revealed themselves.
So that would have been an awesome thing to do, is to show
it
what she
revealing.
was seeing and show the colors of the dresses, because there were different colored dresses that matched with the women, which is why she was confused about who's actually there.
Right.
So if they would have suddenly had like a reveal in her mind where all the details merged together, that would have been kind of cool.
I don't remember them doing anything like that.
What they did in the movie is it's in the tunnel. She would see a silhouette running at her, and every different time they did it, it would be somebody else running at her. It would be the victim. It would be her ex-husband. It would be
that's weird.
The ex's husband, the victim's husband.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
Yeah,
it was a pretty terrible movie.
And you're like, which one of these is real? And you don't find out until the end, but there was no detectiveness to it. It was just like, oh, we gotcha.
You're literally waiting for someone to her brain to put information back together because she blacked out so bad from drinking.
Yeah.
The other part of it that I thought would be interesting is, so in the book, she is a drunk. Her life is basically falling apart. And I think she was seeing a counselor. And she was explaining to the counselor basically I do these terrible things when I'm blacked out. Mm-hmm. And then you find out later on that she wasn't doing those terrible things. Her ex-husband was.
Yeah, we found that out.
Was telling her that she had done them.
And in the book, it's really powerful in a way because
I actually thought that was the one part of the movie that worked for me. I don't think that worked for you because I think you knew that was coming.
I knew who the killer was. I didn't know I didn't know who she.
I didn't know her ex-husband was lying to her about the kind of person.
It really added a dimension.
That I didn't know. I knew he did it.
Yeah.
Spoiler, but
it added a dimension
spoiler.
there. Yeah. I think that was really gave his character a depth that was not, because when you're doing in the book, you're not really seeing a lot of their life, and you certainly aren't seeing his danger.
No, at all. Not in the movie either.
Okay.
And so that was actually the one impacting part of the movie for me. They're on the train. She sees the wife of their boss or something. She goes up and she says, "I'm so sorry for that night that I ruined your party
Yeah,
or whatever
yes.
on the train. And
They're
she's
like,
like,
what are you
she's like,
talking
what are you
about?
talking
Lisa
about?
Kudrow's character.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lisa Kudrow's character is like, what are you talking about? You didn't
You were
ruin
lovely.
anything.
You
You were
just-
fine.
And the crazy part of that was really powerful for me to read too, before we kind of wrap up and go on to the next thing, is in life, when you are so isolated and you have an addiction, or you're just isolating yourself and you don't talk to people because you're embarrassed about, what's going on. Until she really decided to come out of her shell and say something, didn't have the ability to put those pieces together. So she had to kind of gain confidence. And that was kind of fun to read in the book. But, it ends with this huge fight, and then it kind of goes on from there, and you have to kind of make assumptions about her getting, well in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I would give the book maybe like a C. So I definitely didn't think it was a horrible book.
Yeah, I think I gave the movie
highlights.
a C minus D plus, somewhere in that range.
But it was a pretty quick read. I mean, I think I read it in like 2.5 or 3 hours, maybe.
It was a rated R soap opera that thought it was smarter than it was. That's what the movie was.
I was going to go with one of those. Wait, never mind.
Like a Lifetime made for TV.
Lifetime. I was going to go Lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it didn't know it was a Lifetime made for TV movie. It thought it was Gone Girl. It thought it was, a really
It
smart
tried
thriller.
so hard to be Gone Girl.
Well,
Like,
Gone Girl was a mind. I don't even know what to call it. It was like,
I call them mind flips.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's your PG
That
version.
That's my
one
of
PG
it.
messed
version.
me up. That movie messed me up for
Yeah.
a minute. That was.
I think that's the intent.
that was like on a level of 7 in a way.
Wow. That's a
Where
whole different type of mind flip.
7.
Yeah.
7 was something that was like super horrible.
I'm surprised you watched
But then
7.
I was told it was going to be okay
By who?
by people who weren't really my friends, Andrew.
Apparently, yeah.
What's
Not
in
my
the box, Danae? What's in the box?
By
Yeah.
that moment, I was so traumatized I could hardly move. I couldn't speak well for like 2 days
I
after
bet.
watching that movie.
I bet.
Anyway,
What else do you want to talk about?
I really wanted to bring up that I watched the full season of Luke Cage. I always
almost did
call
it.
him Nick Cage. I always say Nick Cage.
She always says Nick
If Nick
Cage.
Cage had a season show about himself, I would watch it.
Oh
Just-
my goodness. But I did watch it. I watched the whole. Have you watched the whole season?
Well, we talked
Yeah.
about Luke Cage on the podcast.
I know.
And
So I don't want to spend
it's
too much
good
time
because
on
I
it.
had only watched 5 episodes at the time, and now I've watched the full season
You
as
did?
well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it there's some closure here that we can add to the Luke Cage
Let's
thing.
have a closure moment.
Like spoiler closure?
No,
or-
no.
Okay.
I would just say I had told you guys I wasn't really getting into it over the first 5 episodes. There were things I liked about it, but it felt a little slow to me.
And we told you that there was a twist coming.
I know the twist that you're talking about. Pretty
Okay.
sure. I can tell you afterwards, and you can confirm with me.
Yeah.
It did not change for me, though.
Really? Okay.
I still felt like the show was, what was it, 13 episodes? That could have been 8 episodes. Like, I felt like they could have condensed
and we
the show.
did agree with you on that.
Yeah,
front,
it felt like they took way too long doing stuff, and so it kind of lost me in a lot of ways.
I
What
want to
was-
hear what Danae thinks.
Yeah, what was your experience, Danae?
I liked it, but I also thought it was long, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
I felt like even the show episodes themselves moved like slower.
Too slow. Yeah.
But I was really appreciating what was happening. I felt like I was watching a culture piece. And I felt like
Right.
it was it was like an honorable thing to the subject matter we're talking about, Black culture, Black pride.
Yep.
I think it's a super important piece to have out in our culture right now. I love that I was seeing such a variety of people that, completely dominated by African Americans, which I just absolutely loved.
Mm-hmm.
It was I liked a lot of that. I liked Luke Cage and Jessica Jones a lot because he was so mysterious. And this one, I think I was enjoying him for the most part. I liked his story arc, him kind of more embracing who he is. And then, he's like this guy that's impenetrable, quite literally. You can't and then there's things that shift and change there. And they kept turning things as you went. It didn't stay stagnant for me very long, but it felt long. But it wasn't as stagnant long. I didn't feel like they sat too long in one storyline. They introduced new elements. Every episode had an interesting thing going on. I really enjoyed having it on while I was just doing life stuff, so I'd kind of have it on. I wasn't engrossed watching it like Stranger Things.
Right.
I wasn't like, I can't look away from the television.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it kind of, for me, I think maybe that's why I think it felt long, is that I wanted it to be something like that.
Yeah.
But overall, I really enjoyed it. I had a really great time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we felt almost exactly the same way on that.
I think that Luke Cage's character walked on eggshells for just a couple episodes too long, because he was very timid in the beginning.
Right.
And then he would become confident, and then he would go back to being timid again.
Yeah.
And there was no smooth transition from,
I will
the
also say,
awesome Luke Cage that we wanted.
I agree. I will also say when let's just call it, for staying away from spoiler purposes, when his kryptonite was introduced to the story, I didn't understand. I didn't understand the kryptonite, for one, like why it worked.
Yeah.
And I also didn't understand why all of a sudden he wasn't just like everybody else then. Like, if everybody has his kryptonite, why is he still special? You know what I mean? Like, it was the TV show didn't do a good enough job for me of clearing up why he wouldn't be dead. Let's just say that.
So I'm going to try and explain it without getting into too many spoilers.
Okay.
So his kryptonite, I know that's ironic calling it kryptonite.
Sure, it absolutely is.
But it's because that stuff came from the alien invasion in the first Avengers movie.
Right.
So that's why it's not from this world. That way it can hurt him.
Uh-huh.
So that's what that was.
Okay. Well, okay, that's part one, but more importantly for me is part two of, now that that's a thing, like, I just didn't like all this. To me, I actually have the same problem with Superman, so we'll just keep it in those terms.
I don't like Superman, so.
I have the same problem with Kryptonite and Superman, which is, so why is this person even a superhero anymore? Like, we have something that completely disables them. So,
but not like a lot. It's not like we can mine kryptonite on Earth.
That's true.
That's
fair.
There's a limited supply.
Sure.
In that case, you know, so it would be like the government powers that be. So
for me, I would love a superhero who didn't have the weakness, like the one thing that could take them down,
multiple things that could hurt them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a small thing,
Luke
though.
Cage did have an element of Hulk to him. Like, he had that kind of Hulk smash, super powerful. So he does have a vulnerability to him. He does have, I would say love interests, but not cheesy way.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a normal friendships that are developing and relationships that are developing and care that's developing. I liked that we, the people watching the show, knew he was a good guy, even though other people didn't know. That's always a fun thing to experience when you're like, oh, you've got the wrong guy, So that was kind of fun. In the chat, I see that there was a question about if we needed to watch other shows.
Yeah, Daredevil,
to
Jessica
be
Jones.
introduced to Luke.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Although in Jessica Jones, he does play an interesting role where you get
a fairly large role.
You get to see his powers in that, but I don't think that it informs the show. There are references that the show makes to him knowing somebody, I think, in a different part of New York. But that happened in Jessica Jones too, where there's references to, like, the nurse references that she has a friend.
Well, she's in every single Netflix show too.
And I don't
Dawson.
know that. So I haven't seen Daredevil, so I don't know. I can't speak to that, though.
This is what
like
I say.
One of the main characters in Daredevil.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is what I say. I say it's like all the MCU stuff, the Marvel universe. You don't have to have seen any other part for a movie or a TV show to make sense or to be fun or interesting. But if you have seen every other part, it adds a whole new level.
I will say I only watched Luke Cage because of his appearance in Jessica Jones. That's the only reason I started, is because I wanted to see what happened to him.
And this is all leading to one where they're all in the same show, right?
The Defenders.
The Defenders is coming in like 2 years?
Yeah, it's not. It is next year.
So it'll be Luke Cage, Daredevil, Jessica Jones,
Iron Fist, and
Punisher. Yeah.
Cool.
So it's all leading to a Avengers type thing on TV.
What about the Flash?
No, he's DC.
That's DC. Sorry.
But can he just cross barriers and get over?
Technically,
true.
he could manipulate the time
I just want to make sure.
and he could travel over to the Marvel universe.
So that's it. I think I want to just let you guys know that I have been watching pop culture. I have been participating in pop culture.
Now that I think about it, he does have a second kryptonite. It's his compassion. He cares so much. I know it's not a physical, kryptonite, but that is like his downfall throughout the main part of that show. And we didn't really talk about this, but we did whenever Chris was on. One of my favorite characters in the entire show is Harlem. Harlem itself becomes a character in the show.
City of Harlem, yeah.
I think that's what I was kind of
the area of
feeling whenever I was like, I feel like this is an important piece. It's an important show for that reason.
You have like Method Man showing up, and
that
was so good.
Let me end with this, Danae. I would be really interested if you watched a couple episodes of the TV show Atlanta. It's a comedy by Donald Glover, and it's about 22 minutes long. It is the comedy version of what you're talking about with Luke Cage, with like African American culture, and it's all African American actors and actresses, but it's kind of the comedy version of that. But it also has something important to say. I'd be really curious if you would enjoy that for the same reasons.
Respectful comedy?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I'll watch it.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's respectful because it's letting us into a culture that I'm just not in, and so I get a perspective that I don't have, and I love that. So yeah, I would definitely. I would be really interested if you get a chance to check out Atlanta. It's on FX.
I wouldn't mind watching that because in the world of Luke Cage, it's a lot of drug dealing and crime, and so we're kind of getting a particular police officer, so we're getting like a particular kind of visual and a particular world. So going more into a comedy, maybe more family stuff would be kind of good.
No, it's still
crime?
gritty. Yeah, it's still he is promoting a rapper, so it's kind of in the kind
music
of the hip
industry?
hop universe, and it's an underground rapper in Atlanta. So yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to our buried treasure. We'll finish with one thing in pop culture that we want to make sure you know about. Everybody prepped? Everybody got something?
Yeah, why don't you go first?
You want me to go first?
Go first.
I'm super excited about a new show that my family binged watched together. All 6 of us sat in the same room for 10 hours and watched the first season of this show. Mm-hmm. It is a reality show called Alone from the History Channel. Now, what this is basically Survivor, but to the max. So 10 people. In the first season, it's 10 men. Although I guess in the second season, there are women that do it as well. And basically, they are stranded on Vancouver Island, which, by the way, is not a tropical paradise island.
Pretty cold.
Yeah, you've got cougars and bears and all sorts of wildlife. They're stranded with nobody else. All 10 of them are in the same area, but they can't get to each other. And whoever stays the longest wins the money.
Until you quit.
Until you tap out. So it was intense. It was interesting. 2 people tapped out within the first couple days because bears were wandering around their area, and they were just like, I'd rather live without the money than die. It is amazing. We had so much fun watching this show together, and I can't wait to watch season 2, which is already complete. So
do they let the other contestants know when people tap out?
I have no idea.
So you could technically be the last one there, and you could be there for like 3 weeks beyond.
Well, I'm sorry, the last one knows. Once they're the last one, they come and tell them you've won.
I wondered about that when you were talking about this because this popped up in our radio show world that Aaron and I have together, and I was curious about what he was meaning about the show. Mm-hmm. And I didn't clarify that, so I'm glad you did because I was thinking he could seriously stay out there forever and no one would ever tell him.
Yeah,
poor guy.
I know.
They get to pick 10 survival items. So they do have survival items with them, but they get to pick 10 from a list, and then they just go and they try to survive. And it's so interesting because the third place person who tapped out with 2 people left in it, of course, he didn't know there were 2, how many people were still left in it.
Yeah.
He had built, get this, he had built a boat so he could go fishing. He had built what's called a yurt, which is basically a home.
I've lived in
with
yurts.
A fire inside.
Whoa!
And like he could have lived there. Like he had it down, and he was just like, you know what? I've done everything I came to do. I think I feel complete. I'm out.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to watch that kind of psychological stuff. Another person left because before he came, one of his relatives had gotten cancer or something, and they said, go do this, stay out there, don't worry about me. And he basically just left because he's like, I gotta get home, to see what's going on, So it's just really interesting to see the psychology of these people, and I had a really great time with it.
Yeah.
What about you, Andrew?
Just real quick, could I find that on Hulu or?
I'm not sure. I just found it on the History Channel. It's on the History Channel, and they stream a lot of their stuff. That's where we found it. So, it might be on Hulu. I'm not sure.
All right, I'm gonna check it out. I definitely am.
It's so cool.
And just real quick, I want to let you know that I did start watching The Good Place.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah,
You're right. It's great. But My Buried Treasure is another show that I started watching. And whenever you're a week late on something for this show, it makes me feel really bad because last week we talked about our fall shows that we started watching.
Yeah.
And I picked up one that none of us had mentioned. And it is definitely, easily my number 1 show of the year right now.
Okay.
and it might be one of my favorite shows of all time.
Wow.
I
Tell
know.
us.
It's called This Is Us. Have you been watching it?
No, I have not been watching it. I've heard about it. I have heard both sides. I've heard people who love it because it's so emotional, and I've heard people who say it's just sappy and they can't enjoy it. It's
Cannot
just too
stop watching it.
Yeah.
So the basic premise of this show, I don't want to give too much away because of the first episode was that's the hook and sink, and I'm with this show forever now.
Yeah.
The pilot was so good. The basic premise is it tells the story of a bunch of people who were all born on the same day and how different their lives are. You have two twins, you have a father and wife who are pregnant, you have this young man who's being reunited with his father, and just how all these stories get intertwined somehow is like mind-blowingly good. I cried and laughed in a 5-minute span in multiple episodes of the show.
That's what people are saying. It just really tugs on all those strings. So
Well, that means I will never watch it.
I know that's I'm kind of leery too.
It's so good. And coming right off of the premiere of The Walking Dead, I needed something like this. So
Fair enough.
yeah, cannot recommend This Is Us enough. It's on Hulu. So
Very cool. Danae?
I struggle with this because I usually just go app route
Yeah,
or
sure.
games or something like this. But I'm really enjoying a YouTube channel, and I don't think I've talked about this on Siftpop before, but Tommy Edison
Yeah.
XP, have we talked about it on Siftpop?
I don't think we've
before?
talked about it on Siftpop, but yeah, I know Tommy Edison.
This is one of my favorite YouTube channels. This is a guy who is
right below your movie Friend and Flick Freaks.
Yes.
And then comes Tommy Edison. Yeah, totally.
That's
We
why I said
understand.
one
Yeah.
of my favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. We totally
multiple. He is a blind film critic, which is really fun, but he kind of branched and started doing more like personality driven, people asking him questions.
I love some of the questions he answers.
Yeah, like, can you draw these items? Can you draw a cat?
Can I tell you my favorite recently?
Yeah.
My favorite recently was somebody asked him, I never thought of this. Did you believe it when you first heard people could actually see? Like, did you believe there were people who could actually see?
wow.
Or did you think, like, no, you're just messing with me. Everybody's like me. I never had thought about that. What an interesting,
I never would have thought of that question. Did you believe?
Yeah.
He does things like, guest scented candles. He'll try to interact. He'll answer questions like, can you describe a cloud? And he is so good. He's such a great personality. That's why you go watch
And he's
him.
so accessible, He
laughs.
Mhm.
He has
There's
a
no
good
judgment.
time. No.
Yeah.
He describes, things that we're curious about because he's blind. But then we also, really get to kind of hear his heart sometimes in different episodes. I am fascinated by him. And anyway, it's Tommy Edison XP is his YouTube channel.
He just got a new subscriber. I'm definitely going to be checking it out.
Oh, good. I really love his personality. I love his laugh a lot. And one of my most memorable ones that I've seen was when the question came, can you open your eyes? And he said, yes, I can, but I haven't used these muscles in a long time. And so he just you're watching and you're just like leaning into your screen. And then it's like this little drum goes ding, when his eyes finally open, and he had to really try at it to get them open.
Yeah.
So he's kind of willing to just, talk about everything, and he goes to like different Comic-Con conventions, and so he kind of has a little bit of a following, but anyway.
Yeah, and he's been doing some crossovers recently with other YouTube channels and that kind of stuff. So
he's a good
collabs.
guy.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. And I love it when he draws. The drawing one that he put out recently is particularly hilarious. I love how.
What did he try to draw?
I think he tried to draw like a cat, and he, giving it all these. He gives it the legs, but he can't see the paper, so it's all based on of course.
Well, it's all based on what he's felt
orientation.
too.
Yeah. So I mean, there's just that stuff just fascinates me because I love when people who are so open to talking about how their life is so different than just a normal sighted person. We have so much more of an ability to just
just for a second to think of how his mind envisions the world.
For him to be like, well, I think I understand what the sky is, and then it just blows my mind.
Yeah, I think I understand what colors are.
I feel like I understand what the depths of the ocean means. There's just different things that I've never thought about.
I don't understand what the depths of the ocean means.
I don't want to. Ocean's scary.
The ocean is scary.
Let's stay out of the ocean.
Stay out of the ocean. Landlocked Missouri. Woo!
Thanks so much for joining us today, Siftpop, part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other live and later shows on the network by following the feed at mixlr.com/StudioDNA. That's MIXLR.com/StudioDNA. Huge thanks to today's guru, Danae Hughes.
Aw, thanks for having me, guys.
Today, anything you want to let people know about, promote?
Follow me on Instagram.
There you go.
My username is JDenee, JDenee. Then you see pictures and stuff.
Nice. Hopefully you don't have a Vine you want to promote.
No, Vine is no more.
Did it go away?
Yeah,
Vine shut down.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's a sad day.
Do we care?
What
Number
did
4.
What did they do wrong?
They didn't make money.
Yeah.
Oh.
It just wasn't worth it anymore.
Yeah.
I think, streaming video is becoming the thing, like longer streaming video. And so the short streaming stuff just didn't, or the short video snips.
Hard to make a joke in 6 seconds.
Plus, animated GIFs kind of took over too.
Yeah.
And so, it's just like, poor Vine.
Poor Vine.
Let's have a moment of silence for Vine.
It died on the vine.
Oh! Today, Hughes! Punning it up!
I did it!
You did it today! Much love and gratitude also to our Patreon supporters for giving monthly to make this show and others on the network possible. Support starts at $3 a month and comes with some pretty fun perks. You can find out more at patreon.com/StudioDNA. Also, please rate and comment at your podcast player of preference, especially if it's iTunes. iTunes uses that information to promote the show, and it'd be a huge boost if you could leave a comment. Anything else you want to say or ideas for the show, feel free to send them our way through email. That's feedback@siftpop.com.